Hi, what a great crowd. I think I last spoke about a year ago when we were in the same venue, and I think you've grown about 100 people since the last meeting I spoke at, so this is really great. And I understand I'm keeping you for lunch, so I'll try to be pretty quick. So I'm going to begin with my theory of the IPv4 life cycle. And my view is that the price curve is shaped a little bit like a hill, I'll call this. And initially there was lots of supply. Is there a way to make this point, Keith? Which one? Sorry. I won't shine it at you. Okay. So initially there was lots of supply, lots of IPv4 available right here. And this was the time that was best for the buyer when there were lots of IPs and Aaron still had lots of free supply. And then this past July, we ran into Aaron run out. And then the inter-RIR policy was enabled from Arid Region. And what we've seen recently is an increasing price phenomenon in all the regions. And with the implementation of the inter-RIR policy, we also saw what I would call price equalization across all the regions. So we're seeing prices pretty much equal in all three regions where you have transfer policy where you can transfer IPs. So that's right here. Now, what I think will happen next is we'll see some /8s come to market. And when this happens, I predict a little dip in price if a lot of them come to market all at the same time. Because supply will increase, price should drop a little bit. And when this happens, then there should be increased trading, and again, eventually prices will start to rise again. And eventually we're going to have prices crest as IPv6 becomes more dominant or as IPv6 becomes the prevalent protocol. And the ideal window of opportunity, I've called it here, for a seller would be the point at which the price is the highest. And then finally, when IPv4 usage starts to decline or IPv6 usage starts to take off, whichever way you want to look at it, that's when prices will start to fall. And eventually IPv6 usage, in theory, will become dominant. And you, the engineers in the room, will tell me if that's ever going to happen and V6 dominates over IPv4. And I have a few slides that are looking at the factors that affect pricing in more detail. And first of all, I think the supply in Arid Region and the number of transfers in Arid Region is important. So I took a look at the number of transfers in Arid Region over time. And you can see that in the past year, there's a sudden spike in Arid activity. And this spike is basically the equivalent of a /8, if you think of a /8 as being 16.7 million IP addresses. So it's pretty interesting that as soon as Aaron runout happened, all of a sudden there was a huge spike in activity. Then I've got 5 other factors that I think will affect the price. So first of all, ripe inter-RIR transfers. They've been possible just for about half a year now. And as I said, they cause prices to equalize across the regions. Then you've got IPv6 deployment. And once companies deploy IPv6 and stop demanding IPv4, we're going to see a decline in prices. Next, carrier-grade NAT, or basically any other strategy besides CGN that becomes an alternative to IPv4 or a way to stretch IPv4. I think anything like that, in a technology maybe, if you will, that allows IPv4 to be stretched, that'll cause prices to at least slow down and increase. Fourth factor would be, as I mentioned, if legacy /8s come to market, that'll increase the supply of IPv4. And lastly, if there are applications, whether it's cloud applications, internet applications, anything like that that requires more IPv4, then I think you're going to see demand push prices up. This is kind of interesting. I don't know that anybody else could show you this. These are real prices that we've plotted of our transactions over time. So the size of the bubble represents the number of IPs, and then the price point goes up the vertical curve. And if you looked at it closely, what you would see is a decline in price through about September of this year, a very gradual decline. And then we've kind of seen an inflection point in September. Prices have started to rise since September. And I think that's a reflection of a couple of things, air and run out being one of them. And I think the other thing is the fact that when the ripe region increased its demand and air and IP started to transfer into ripe, it caused prices to increase across all regions. Because I'm speaking in the UK, I thought I would include a couple of slides that looked at ripe transfer activity. So these are taken from the ripe transfer logs. This is not just UK, but all of ripe. This is interesting. The top slide, it shows that the most common block transferred is the /22. Whoops, I'm sorry, wrong button. Whoops, go back. Okay, here we go. The most common block transferred is the /22. But then if you look at where do the most IPs come from, /16s. And then one for you UK people. The UK, whoops, I keep doing this. The UK is the 4th most common destination for IPs in terms of transfer location. And then finally, I think this is interesting too, that there's been a fall off of IPs transferred, a downward sloping curve. And I don't believe this is because demand has lessened. I believe it's because supply has lessened that we've seen fewer transfers. The other point to make is that legacy IPs are not reflected in the ripe stats. So anything that comes, for example, from the UK government would not be reflected in these transfer stats. And I would like to close with some predictions for the future. First of all, I don't believe we're yet at the top of the price curve. I think what I'm hearing in the US is that the companies with the legacy /8s are asking higher prices than what the current market price is, and they have not yet come to market because even though there are requests for IPs from some emerging countries, they haven't yet achieved the price that those companies are willing to sell at. So I think prices will still go a little bit higher because of that. I think that the /8s will keep coming to market because I'm hearing that certain companies are still willing to sell. And then lastly, I think there's a shortage of IPs in ripe region because of that factor. And I'm hearing that and seeing that the inter-RIR transfers are starting to happen into ripe. So with that, I'd be glad to take any questions you might have, or we can go for lunch. Thank you. Oh, a question.
Just it's Trev from Lonap. Be interested to hear if you had certain dates in your mind about the sides of the green points and your curve, really.
Well, I think that the starting point was 2011 probably, when transfers started. The endpoint, I think it depends on IPv6, and maybe some of the IPv6 experts are in a better position to answer, when is IPv6 going to be prevalent? And from where I'm sitting, I don't see it happening. Demand is very high right now for IPv4 addresses, as high as I've seen it.
Okay, any other questions?
Thank you. And I have some giveaways at my booth. Please come by and pick something up and have a chat.
Addresses.
No. But that's a great idea.